This is Joe narrating a PowerPoint in Social Studies on U.S. History, Lesson 1, on page 430 of the Kaplan book. Before we talk about European settlements in North America, we have to go back to the Native Americans. So human species, at least the modern human species called Homo sapiens, we think evolved in Africa about 200,000 years ago. If you look at this map, you'll see the migration routes of modern people. Starting about 200,000 years ago in Africa, they left Africa 100,000 years ago to populate Europe and Southeast Asia. They continued into North America about 15,000 years ago, and then into South America. Europeans had the same migration pattern starting in Europe in the 1400s and up to the 1600s. They were exploring continents outside of Europe. You can see here, for example, in red is Portugal. They sent explorers to South America, and that's why Brazilians speak Portuguese. They sent explorers around the southern tip of Africa and into India and these what were called the Spice Islands. Other countries we don't think of as world powers nowadays at that time included the Netherlands, France, and England. England sent explorers to North America, and France sent explorers to North America. The first English settlement in North America was Jamestown, Virginia in 1607, or a more famous colony was established by the Pilgrims, and we celebrate their settlement in Massachusetts during the Thanksgiving holiday. The Pilgrims were a group of religious believers who were persecuted by the Church of England in England, and they decided to leave England. They eventually took the ship called the Mayflower and sailed across the Atlantic and ended up in Massachusetts. They landed north of their intended target, and they landed in Plymouth Rock, Massachusetts in 1620. They had a very hard winter, and the following year they had a celebration of their own survival around the time of our present Thanksgiving holiday. "130 years later, territories in North America, at least eastern North America, had been settled by France and by England. On this map you see New France in light color, and you see the darkest color on this map are the English settlements along the coast of the mid-Atlantic states. The area in between, in the middle shade, was disputed territory, and this was fought for from 1754 to 1763 in what was called the French and Indian War. Eventually the English took over all territories south of present-day Canada, and French acquired the land north of the present border. In order to pay for this war, England imposed taxes on the North American colonists, and the people in North America did not like these taxes. For example, in 1770 there was a protest, at which time the British soldiers, here shown on the right in the red coats, shot at the Bostonian colonists, and 5 of these colonists were killed. This created more bad feelings between the colonists in North America and the English. In 1774, in response to punitive laws that were passed by England against the colonists, 12 of the 13 colonies met at Carpenter's Hall right here in Philadelphia to draw up a list of grievances against King George III of England. The plans were made to have a second Congress if he did not respond to these list of demands. The king did not respond to the list of demands in a favorable way. Therefore, representatives from the 13 colonies met at Independence Hall in Philadelphia to sign the Declaration of Independence on July 2nd, 1776. It was published on July 4th, 1776, which we celebrate as the birthday for our nation. Thomas Jefferson lived on the second floor of this house at 7th and Market, and this is where he drafted the Declaration of Independence. This is a reconstruction of the original house, but it is opened periodically during the year by the National Park Service for tours. The Declaration of Independence was signed by many of the colonists, and it declared independence of the colonies from the rule of King George III in England. George Washington did not sign the Declaration of Independence, but he is one of the more famous founders of our country. At the time the Declaration was signed, he was setting up the defense of Manhattan against the British, but he is celebrated throughout our country. Here in Philadelphia, we see a statue of George Washington right in front of the Art Museum, a statue of George Washington in Washington Square near Independence Hall, and he is on our $1 bill. In 1788, the United States Constitution was ratified or approved by the number of states required to ratify it, which was 9. It took effect in 1789. George Washington became the first President of the United States. Right after the Constitution was ratified, the founders of our nation were sure to include rules that protected the individuals against tyranny by the government. These first 10 amendments to the Constitution are called the Bill of Rights, and they guaranteed certain rights like freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of assembly, that is to meet in protest. It provided that a jury trial would be guaranteed in state and federal trials, and many other individual rights that we take for granted today. That is it.